Thanks for joining us at this inaugural session of Voices of Effectiveness. My name is Murray Streets. I'm the Managing Director of BCNF Dentsu, Barnes Kaplan and Friends Dentsu. I, many years ago, well, a few years ago now, not that many years ago, not that great, I set up the Strategic Planning Lab with the wonderful folk at the Commercial Communications Council, our industry body. And it occurred to us as we entered this strange time that we find ourselves in, that as we had to delay that course, we only got as far as day one. Unfortunately, they got to hear from me. I bet they wish that I was on day two. We decided that it would be a good idea to try and reach out and continue the conversation around effectiveness, which is a big part of that course. So what we're hoping to do, I'm hoping this is the first time we see you guys, but hopefully some of you will come back after the first failed attempt. We want to reach out and have conversations with people in the wider community of New Zealand agencies. And in discussing this with the Comms Council, particularly Marlon, industry professional development leader, I should say, not a manager, a leader, we agreed that we thought it was important that a lot of big agencies and big network agencies do the usual set piece things and enter awards and especially effectiveness awards, which are all fantastic. But it's kind of good at this time to kind of pay it forward and give other agencies that don't necessarily make a habit of entering those awards or turning up at those awards to talk about the work they do, because effective work is going on 365 days a year. Over many years across New Zealand, and so that's really the intention of these sessions, and we hope you enjoy them. I'm sure we'll get feedback if you do or you don't, and you can stalk me on LinkedIn and tell me that you think it's a load of rubbish and you'd like an hour of your time back, but I'm not going to give it to you. But we hope that there's some value in this, and as ever, working with Marlon and the team, Erin, we're pretty focused on what learnings people can get from talking to practitioners in the industry, specifically around effective work you may not have heard of. You may not have come across it. And I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to showcase that work, talk to the people behind it, and get them to share the story of the effectiveness and the work that went into producing the result, and then also tell us a little bit about what they learned along the way. So that's kind of the formal bit's done, and I'm thrilled that we've been able to kick off with a session talking to Chris Williams, who's the CEO at KingSt Advertising, who are based in Hamilton and Tauranga. Chris, we're delighted to have you with us today, and I'm really excited about the conversation we've had prior to this recording. And it's just one of those lovely things about this moment, in that I've stalked you on LinkedIn, and I've been aware of your presence in the industry, but we've never actually chatted. And now we get a chance to do it in front of, well, probably 5 people, but it's still an audience. So maybe it'll be 10 by the end of the series. Who knows? We'll do our best. We'll do our best to create some fame for you. But anyway, delighted to have you here. And I just wanted to start by saying, how's your team faring in lockdown?
Right, so thanks, Murray, and thank you for that intro. It's great to be here too, and I have been stalking you in return, just so you know. It's a mutual stalking that's going on here. And good to meet up in person. It's weird how we don't catch each other at all, and then this happens, and then we meet these people. It's really good. So we're going well. We obviously all spread far and wide with our Tauranga and our Hamilton teams. And really, it's kind of it's been fairly smooth, to be honest. I'm in Raglan. I've opened up officially. It's the KingSt Raglan office. Can you see that?
Excellent, lovely.
And then we've got people around various other parts, and we're going well. And I don't know about you guys. I've spoken to various other colleagues in the industry, but we've actually been really busy, and it's been working really well.
No, it's great.
I think it's going to be harder coming out of this than it was going in.
I think you're right. We are in for a long haul, aren't we, on this one, as the economy adjusts? But it's great to hear. And your teams are, how big are your teams in Tauranga and Hamilton?
Right, so we're 23 in total. So there's 15 in Hamilton, and the rest, I guess that's 8 over in Tauranga.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, we're pretty much mainly. I think everyone's pretty much in Hamilton and Tauranga, and there's 3 of us over here in Raglan. Various locations. We've got little Raglan community
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of sub-tribe.
Yes, that's right. There's a lot of pressure to open an office over here from people, because one of our other account managers, who Marlene knows as well, Teresa, she's moving over here later on this year also. So anyway, we'll see.
Yes, well, one hopes that in the sort of shakeout of work-life balance, I think getting a surf-orientated advertising agency office would be a smart move, I think, for retention and for engagement.
Definitely pressure along those lines. No question about it.
Anyway, no, I'm glad to hear that you guys are in fine fettle, and I just wanted to invite you now to kind of talk about the particular piece of work that you can share with us today. I can, as a very broad setup, I can say what I'm really excited about is that this is, we talk a lot in the business about what is effectiveness, and one of the things we do know from the data is that effectiveness is a long-term game.
Yeah.
And what's great is you're going to share with us a case study for some work that you've done with Dairy New Zealand that started in 2011, so it's been going for 9 years. And what got me very excited when we were talking before this session was that it was basically focused in the rural sector.
Yeah.
And you and I were sharing our love of kind of rural advertising and the rural tone of voice, and said posh bloke from England, but didn't mean to be patronising there. But you can take.
I always admired your work on FMG.
Oh, well, that's very kind.
I probably lost to the best campaign on that one once I saw it.
Very kind, but I think we were both saying there's the opportunity to do some really, really great work in the rural sector, and so it's great to be able to talk about work in that context. So. Look, I'll hand over to you. I'll lob in the odd, fairly straightforward question, I hope, and we'll have a correro about the effectiveness around this piece of work.
Okay, great. Look, I'll just do a quick intro. Then, in fact, I've got a wee video I'm going to share, which will do a much better job of describing the campaign than I ever would. But anyway, the client is Dairy NZ, and they are a levy-based organisation. So all the dairy farmers of New Zealand pay them a levy based on their volume. I don't need to go into too much detail about that, but among many things that they do, a big part of their remit is in the public perception of dairy farmers. As you know, and as you often hear, dairy farmers get a pretty hard time about one thing and another, but they are actually the most, they love their animals, they love their land, and all the rest of it, but they get a hard time. So a big part of this campaign is kind of educating the general public on what they do and how great they are. And so this aspect of the campaign is actually the one that's aimed at kids. They've got kind of two strands to it. This one is kind of like 5 years old to 12 years old, basically from early entrance school to intermediate, just on intermediate school. And it's a campaign that's been running for 9 years, and it's called Rosie's World. And so maybe what I should do now is show you the video. This is going to be a true test of my advanced Zoom skills, so stand by. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Rosie, the New Zealand dairy industry's cow ambassador, and since September 2011, I've been working with KingSt to teach Kiwi kids all about the dairy industry in New Zealand. To help in my duties as cow ambassador, the fantastic people at KingSt have kindly built me my very own website that both kids and parents love because it's full of safe, fun and, most importantly, educational content. I also have an Instagram and Facebook page that has over 11,000 followers. To help spread the word about dairy, KingSt have also linked me up with social influencers who are helping me reach tens of thousands of new people. I've travelled around New Zealand virtually and physically with my Rosie stage show that KingSt developed with Full House Productions. In the past 5 years, the Rosie show has been performed over 600 times at schools, shopping centres and at special events around the country. And now potentially in every home in New Zealand with my Rosie Show movie. I've met some of the Moo's Moo of New Zealand, like the Right Honourable John Key and the real leader of the country, Richie McCaw. In conjunction with Flux Animation, KingSt have made a whole lot of educational and entertaining animated movies starring myself and a whole cast of original characters. And when my cowambassadorial campaign was running low on funds, KingSt came up with the idea to mount a cow cam to my head so I could continue to make movies at a fraction of the cost. Working with Room 9 and InGame, KingSt have produced a series of dairy-related online games, including Calf Club, which has been played by tens of thousands of Kiwi kids, and my very own touchscreen app, Gumboot Glory, which was downloaded thousands of times in just a few days. KingSt also worked with Random House to publish 2 children's books, Rosie to the Rescue and Rosie's Radical Ride, and over 5,000 books have been printed and sold nationwide. Recently, KingSt have helped me teach kids all about the international impact of the New Zealand dairy industry, sending me on my big OE. I visited over 12 countries, seen some cowtastic sights, and learnt so many fun facts that I let my friends know about through my weekly blogs and postcards. KingSt even made me a TV star, showing my Skype calls home as commercials, both online and on the box. Since then, my website views have increased from 60 to 70 per day to over 1,000. I also make regular appearances on What Now, which sees hits on my website spike by the thousands in just a few hours. In fact, they tell me that in the last year, my site has been visited nearly 900,000 times. To keep audience engagement at its peak, KingSt frequently run Rosie's World competitions. One of my latest ones nearly had 12,000 entries. Working with KingSt is an absolutely fabulous experience. They come with my highest recommendation, the official Cowbassador's Government Seal of Cow Approval, and I'm utterly convinced that they're the right people for you.
There we go. Yeah,
That's nice to see the team behind the work.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so there we go. That's and we've carried on. There's been a few other developments since we put that clip together. So the show continues.
So, I mean, a first question before we get into effectiveness. I mean, is there anything Rosie can't do? I mean, I feel like she should be putting herself forward for leader of the National Party.
Yeah, I know, that's right.
Take it, wouldn't you?
Probably do quite well. No, yeah, very, very, very clever, and has done a lot. Yeah.
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 Really keen to get into the sort of story behind clearly a campaign that's gained a lot of momentum over the years, which is often easier said than done with campaigns. So I think it'll be interesting for us to explore that. But step us right back to the beginning. And you talked earlier about farmers get a hard time. There are often perception issues with farmers, dairy farmers, the industry. How did this project come about? What were the conversations that you had? What was the problem? Did you take it to the client? Did the client brief you? How did that all go down?
Yeah, so it started actually in 2010 with the old, a pitch. I remember it well, and honestly, I could write a whole play or something about the journey that it went on from the pitch through to getting it on air. But the original task was actually I guess to improve the perception of dairy farmers, and specifically with the kind of younger audience. And we lined up against various other agencies, and what actually happened was they appointed another agency to do the more adult-based kind of campaign, and they said we want to use Rosie for this really the specific kids kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and that had various bits of research and those kind of things to back up kind of the need to do this. And I suppose it boiled down to a couple of comments from kids in Auckland, actually, of all places, who had said, the question was, where does milk come from? And some of these kids, their answer was from a carton.
Yes.
So they thought, okay, we've got some work to do here.
Yeah.
And alongside that, there was also a case of, I guess, just running a generational kind of campaign, whereby you've got 4 or 5 kind of key messages that you pick up as an 8-year-old that you carry with you through life. Like when we were kids, you had the stop, look, and listen, and then there's the drop, rock, and roll, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Stop, drop, and roll, isn't it? For the five, come on, guys, be firewise, and those kind of things.
Yes.
So they thought the opportunity is, okay, let's get in there now and get these key messages in front of these very impressionable and I suppose sponge-like kind of kids.
Yes. That's right. And I guess as I reflect on my limited knowledge of the industry, but there's a sense of strong generational change happening at that time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dairy consolidation going on. There's a lot of corporatization of dairy, and a lot of sons and daughters aren't following in the family footsteps. And so there's this sense of, well, how do we engage people in the industry, but also how does the end user, the sons of the Jaffa or the daughters of the Jaffa in Auckland, actually realise it comes from our land, not a carton.
That's right. Yeah, and that's a really good point actually you make. In that another part of the Dairy NZ remit is to, in fact, attract people to the industry. You know, because it's a hard job, but it's also, you know, it's an incredibly diverse and stimulating job. And as you say, there's, you know, succession is a kind of genuine issue. And so that's kind of, I guess, another part of this is just to get kids, you know, acquainted. As a word.
So clearly a number of issues. Was the campaign briefed as a sort of long-term platform? Is that what the client expected, or was it more of a tactical campaign at its beginnings?
Yeah, definitely the intention was for it to, you know, run out over initially kind of 3 to 5 years. And we kind of thought, oh, that would be great if we get this with, you know, it's a 3 to 5 year assignment, would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But because it kind of the momentum it gained, and I guess every year we put it upon ourselves to kind of keep on adding to it, and just keeping the story going, and bringing the initiatives like the book and the pantomime and things like that, just really helped it grow a lot more depth, and then of course the longevity that came with it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So in terms of the insights around the creative sort of solution that you sort of worked on, I guess as part of your pitch response, this is how it came about. You know, are there any, you know, can you paint us a bit of a picture about how Rosie sort of emerged from your thinking as a team?
Yeah, well, I guess if you boil it down in the end, if our job is about, you know, educating on dairy farming, we kind of felt that the way into that would be to create a character, which is basically the factory of the farm, if you like. You know, they're a production machine. And so with that, we thought the other part of it would be to create this quite motherly, kind of knowing sort of presence, very approachable, and someone who could, you know, speak to you like it was your older sister or your mother, and then just be able to pass on all this kind of info. And with that said, also, of course, we kind of felt that we're going to need to bring other things in to the mix as we go, and those are the kind of things that have kind of really enhanced it. In fact, what isn't in this video is that the next stage on is that we've brought in a kind of like a sidekick from town, a little towny kid who comes along and asks dumb questions and things like that. We did a big, in fact, we did a recruitment campaign for that, auditions and all the rest of it. It was a bit like a NZ Idol kind of a thing that we did. And that kind of all kind of added to the picture as well. So, but it kind of, we felt it boils down to, okay, let's create a really endearing character to be that. I suppose in the end, the campaign needed a vehicle, and that's what we created.
Yes, I mean, in that respect, it's a sort of, it is a classic campaign vehicle, isn't it? I mean, I slightly cheekily in my email to you earlier described Rosie as a sort of bovine stickman, rural sector. But there are many similarities between these long-term properties that you build sort of equity into and some associations into, and they do become that vehicle where you can update and re-express them over time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hit your goals. And in terms of measurement of success, did you have in-year goals, or how did you and the client talk about how would you know you were onto something that would last 3 to 5 years in the first instance?
Yeah, I guess for the first 7 or 8 years, it's really just been based on the web traffic, the engagement with the pantomime, the number of, the demand for that, the competition entries, and all those kind of things. And basically, they've just been staggeringly good every year. And so we to start with, they were really just giving us, okay, here are our metrics goals, and then we would kind of go from there. And then along the way, we knew through the anecdotal feedback that, it was actually, this is actually quite a following that we've created, but there was no real data to kind of back that up. I think it was last year or the year before, they actually did some proper research and pulled that together. And I was really, really surprised about how well that went. But we've had, over the years, we've had the traffic count is well into the like 1.2 or 1.3 million. And bearing in mind this is aimed at 5 to 12-year-olds, it's pretty strong.
Yeah. And the kind of measurements that you were assessing for in that, and when you did do that formal research, was that things like brand health, the perception, the levels of engagement with various aspects of the campaign? Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah. So it's kind of in fact, I'll just go to some of the slides here. We interviewed both kids and parents, and it was basically, I guess, first up, we wanted to know what the awareness level was like for the campaign, and it was in the 70% had heard of Rosie the cow, which I was kind of quite shocked about. I didn't think it would be that high. And then there was
that across the national sample, Chris? Sorry to interrupt. Was that across a national sample or
yes.
a rural, provincial, or actually?
Yeah. So it was a national sample, and bear in mind, while this is a rural story, and the rural kind of sector is still an audience, it was also very, very big focus for us to influence the people in Auckland who think milk comes from a carton. It was a national sample, yeah. Yeah, it was about 60% who agreed that Rosie's World is having a positive impact on children's interests in the dairy sector. And it was about the same, Rosie's World is having a positive influence on children's impression of the dairy sector. So interest and impression, all those kind of measures were really, really strong. And then, of course, we had the data, the web data and all that kind of stuff to back it up. So we were really stoked when we got that, because the board understandably asked, well, how well is this working? And a lot of the time we had the web traffic plus anecdotal feedback, where we didn't have that kind of that stuff to back us up. So it was fantastic.
Okay, great. So talk to us about the sort of channel selection and how that evolved, and the channel strategy as you started to build out the campaign, because 2011's a wee while ago, so things have changed quite a lot. Clearly, you produced quite a lot of different experiences off the back of the platform.
That's right. And I'll tell you what, going back, casting my mind back that far is a bit of a challenge too, to be honest. But as anyone knows, I mean, it's actually a pretty hard audience to promote to, 5 to 12-year-olds. You can't go on on their Facebook pages and stuff like that, because they're not supposed to have them, and so on. So a big part of it was to start with. In fact, the client also had a partner that did a lot of work in schools. So a lot of it was seeded in through schools to start with, through teachers and whatnot, and then parents and so on. And then we did do some advertising on the I guess the kids style kind of websites and whatnot. I think Nickelodeon might have even been one of them, and then kind of various others. We built up our database over time, which we've kind of used to great extent, and then of course the website. So it was kind of like a real mixture of different things. And then as time went on, of course, all that has grown. And as you heard, we've got 11,000 on the Instagram page and a pretty big email database and the rest of it. And then, of course, we developed the pantomime, which was actually relatively early in the piece. It was couple of years down the track. And that's when we started to really take off in terms of just building the following and the databases and so on. So it's a tricky job, to be honest. If you're thinking of the average age of about 7 or 8, unless you've got a big TV budget, it's pretty hard. And I think a big part of it for us was field days. I'm not sure how many of you city dwellers have been to field days.
Mm-hmm.
None of you. Anyhow, it's a huge event. It's about 130,000 people go through. And on Fridays in the Waikato, lo and behold, all kids get a day off school to go to field days. My kids never went, I don't think, but they still took a day off school. But anyhow, there's a lot of kids go through with their parents. And so we had the Rosie kind of the launch basically during that time. And that was another really big part of it. And we got actually some really good PR kind of lift out of that as well. So it's just lots and lots of different things that have kind of gone into the mix, really.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we talk about on this strategic planning lab is these principles of trying to create reach all the time. And the way you build brands is not just by talking to existing customers and hoping that heavier buyers will buy you more often or engage with you, but actually just getting reach. And we talk a lot about the principles of Byron Sharp. And what I find interesting about your campaign over 9 years is you're finding surrogate ways to create reach relative to your target audience when you can't necessarily afford, the big proven TV reach. But I love the fact that you're popping up, you're creating memorable experiences for kids, you're encoding Rosie into their minds, and with that comes a whole set of associations, and you're doing that over the long term.
That's right. And look, there's been a couple of years there where, because of the priorities that the client has had, that we've honestly run on the smell of an oily rag, if you like. And the numbers would frighten some of our colleagues in the bigger agencies, because they've been really tight. But we've been incredibly proud of what we've been able to do, just out of exactly as you say, just finding these little ways to get the added reach and so on.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting when you're doing things like a pantomime, people might say, well, why are you doing a pantomime? But then as you say, we're capturing data. And that's giving us a reason and an ability to reconnect with people and re-trigger memories and re-engage. And, a sibling might come along to the first show and then the younger sibling will come along to the next one, and families are engaged. And so you're hitting both of your audiences. Yeah,
that's it. And the content of the pantomime is such that, there's all those kind of 4 or 5 key messages that we want to get across. They're all really cleverly embedded in there. It's a really good show, actually. We're really proud of it.
I feel like you should put it on for the industry as a sort of celebration to come out of lockdown. I think you should come up to the big smoke.
I'll expect Paul and the gang at Comms Council to get us to Access or something to go and put it on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's the halftime entertainment or something.
That's right. Anyway, so you had some objectives to be in market for about 3 to 5 years with a kind of platform, and really the ultimate measure of success was going to be perception shift. You clearly accumulated a ton of engagement metrics, some of these intermediate measures that were a means to an end ultimately. Tell us a little bit about how you stewarded the campaign over that period, because I think, as you mentioned, as priorities change, it is quite an achievement just to have a campaign still around after 9 years. I mean, it's sometimes an achievement to have it around after 18 months.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point. And a big part of my job, I kind of think, as a head of any agency, is to, I suppose, be that guy that's saying, okay, right, we got through that this year. Just say, for instance, I don't know, perhaps it was 2013, around that time, I guess, when we did the pantomime, and that was an agency kind of initiative. We led that. We led the writing and the production, all that kind of stuff, took it on tour. It was a massive undertaking and went really well. But at the end of the year, we said to ourselves, okay, that was good. What are we going to do next year to keep on kind of adding to the story and keeping the audiences engaged? And from memory, we then came up with the idea to send Rosie on her OE. And so Rosie went around the world, finding out about dairy in other countries, but also telling other countries about dairy from New Zealand as well. So, India, China, South America, and all the rest of it. And was able to, we did the blogs back, we did the what do you call them? The postcards back, and all those kind of things. And then we got to the end of that year, and then we came up with something else, more top spin, add another layer to the story, and on it goes. And then we got to it was 1 or 2 years back, we thought, we need to bring another character in here. So we brought in our kid from the town, and he kind of worked with Rosie, asked stupid questions. They did stuff together, cooked stuff together, to recipes using dairy products and all the rest of it. So it's just about keeping on adding every year, coming up with the new ideas and whatnot to add to it.
And did you find that was there a lot of change on the client side there? Was it seen as an asset by the client, or did you have to keep kind of restating the case for Rosie and her world and her role Was that a difficult thing to steward?
Yeah, there have been comings and goings at client side, although there's been a level of consistency as well amongst some of the team. And I guess the one good thing about it is there has been really good commitment to it from the CEO and the board. But it has always been a case of, okay, keep on justifying the spend, show us what's working, and show us what you're going to do next year. Which is kind of what we've kept on doing.
And overall, as we think about kind of stepping back from the campaign, and thank you so much for sort of sharing the story of this sort of, what is this? It's an amazingly integrated campaign with all sorts of moving parts. And I sense, because your resources are not limitless, you've had to be very clear on what elements are doing what role, and everything is by design. It's not just, we'll do it because we could do it. And I always think about, definition of an integrated campaign is not just, I used 4 channels and they were all paid and they were quite expensive, but I have presence in each of those channels. This is a genuinely integrated campaign where you've really thought about how to reach out to that audience. Are there any, so as we think about the role of these sessions as sharing a bit of best practice and wisdom, making and designing effective work, have you got like 2 or 3 tips that you'd give young professionals coming up through the industry that they could focus in on and take away from this session?
Yeah, so I think first of all, and to your point a bit earlier, I kind of think unless you are doing a 90% off sale and you've got 2 weeks, to run it, and the chances are the stuff's going to fly out the door because of the deal that you're doing. Unless you've got that, you do have to think long term, and you've got to, with that, be incredibly consistent with I guess the 4 or 5 kind of key points that you want to keep on making, and that's something that we've done really successfully with this. We've always got back to, okay, this is what are we about? What are we saying? But then I think in terms of surviving the long-term kind of journey, as it were, it is about actually kind of changing it up, adding the top spin, coming up with the new ideas, trying new things, and keeping on adding to it to keep it interesting, and keep people coming back. And that's, I think, what we've done really, really successfully with this campaign. And to your other point as well, this is a remarkable piece of integrated campaign effort, from a book to a pantomime to competitions to games and all the rest of it. It's amazing. So I think it is thinking in all those layers and just working out what you can do the most effectively with those things. And I suppose bringing the client along with the journey is a big part of that as well.
That's great. And just as a final point, the measurement that you put in place, or the benchmarking, or I guess the brand health measures that you took a couple of years ago, I think you mentioned, have you got any plans to repeat that? Is that something you do on a regular basis? Is that something the client's committed to doing, to just keep stress testing the effectiveness of the platform?
Yeah, I think as we get to the end of this financial year, their financial year runs till June. And then we'll start planning for next year. So definitely, I think we should do another dip next year to see how things are going, because we've got a few other things in the pipeline that we would like to get through, or be budget permitting and so on. And then that'll be, I think, time to have another look at it. And like with everyone, the COVID situation has changed a lot for what they're going to do in terms of how they set their priorities. So we'll kind of see what happens from here, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, quite understandable. That would be the case. But I think certainly looking at a fairly superficial level from outside the industry, at least dairy is going well at the moment, and global dairy prices seem to be going in the right direction. And I think we may be relying on the dairy sector to do some heavy lifting for the economy, as it's always done, but ever more so now, especially with the hit for tourism. So
yeah, very much, very much so.
So look, thanks for sharing Rosie's World.
No worries.
It's a great example of knowing your target audience, as you say, being there for the long term, really prizing consistency, but also freshening it up.
Yeah.
So there's always new news and new reasons to engage, and you're clearly very choiceful in how you comprise your channel thinking, if you like, or your experience design around the platform. those are all good things people can see in action in this case study. So thanks so much for sharing, Chris.
No worries. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been it's like I suppose a signature campaign for KingSt. And that cow, the animated cow, let me tell you, that had to have sign off by the in-house vets, right down to the whole makeup, the way she walks, and all the rest of it. That is a very, very accurate cow.
That's the level of bovine craft that only the New Zealand advertising industry can achieve. I just like to point.
Yeah, our good friends at Flux Animation were.
Yes, I noted it was Flux who'd done it, so good on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Chris.
All right, okay.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Murray.